back to Logan Cabinet Shop. I'm Bob Rosieski. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Hand Tools and Techniques. I'm glad you could join me today because I want to talk about what is probably the most fundamental, but ultimately the most important skill in the shop. Now, it's no secret that in order to do fine work, we need to have sharp tools. Sharp tools cut cleaner, more precisely, and in many cases leave a surface ready for finish. Sharp tools also require less effort, which means you have more control of the tool. And a tool that's easier to control is a safer tool. So the next few episodes are going to be a series on sharpening all the different tools in the shop, starting today with the straight edge tools. Over the years, I've tried a lot of different materials and methods of sharpening, and one thing that I learned was that contrary to what some magazine articles and tool catalogs would have you believe, there's no mythical stone or machine that's going to magically turn you into an expert sharpener. To really become a good sharpener, you need to practice at it, but what really helped me more was to really focus on the tool itself, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Now, there are a lot of different materials and methods out there, and just about every one of them will produce an edge plenty sharp enough for fine furniture work. A good sharpener can use oil stones, can use water stones, sandpaper, diamond stones, what have you, and produce a perfectly sharp edge that's perfectly fine for furniture work. Constantly jumping around from oil stones to water stones to sandpaper to some type of sharpening machine is not going to improve your sharpening. Really, you need to focus on the tool and really choose your method, really, and practice it and get good at it. And that's really what's going to help your sharpening out a lot. So let's start by talking about what do we need to do to get a sharp edge. Well, every tool, we're going to just talk about single bevel tools for the purposes of this video. So every tool is going to need some work when you first get it, whether it's a new tool or an old tool. So you have a face side, which is the flat side, and then there's a bevel side, and this is where the bevel is ground, so the single bevel tool. In order to get a sharp edge, both of these surfaces need to be highly polished and meet in the thinnest possible edge. Now, there are a lot of different schools of thought on how to handle the back of a chisel or a plane iron. Some folks like to lap and polish the entire face of the chisel or the plane iron. I've done this a couple times, and it's a lot of work. It takes a long time to do, especially on an older tool that really needs a lot of work, has some pitting or maybe some warping to the iron. It can literally take you a couple of hours to lap all of that out. That's not fun to me. What I've found since then is that I really don't need that entire face to be flat. I really don't need that entire face to be polished. Sure, it helps later down the road if you happen to grind your tool down past the area that was previously polished. You'd have to do it again if you didn't do the whole back. That hasn't really been a problem for me in my experience. I've yet to grind past where I polished. So now I really just focus on maybe the last 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch or so of the back here. And the polish does move slightly with repeated sharpenings because I do continue to work the back of the chisel or the plane iron as I sharpen, and we'll see that as we go along. So again, the first thing we need to do is handle the face, whether this is a new or an old tool. We want to take the tool and get it flat on your stone, whether you choose, if you're going to use water stones, you use a water lubricant. I have oil stones, so I use honing oil. Sandpaper you can use dry, you can use it with oil, water, WD-40, whatever you like. So I place the tool flat on the stone, and I'm putting my pressure with my left hand right over that bevel. So I can actually hold the tool down in one spot just with this finger. That's really what I want to focus on, because I'm looking to really focus on just that area right underneath the bevel, the front 1/4 inch or so. This hand is just helping to guide, but I'm doing most of my pushing with that one finger. And I'm running the tool back and forth, focusing my pressure on that tip. And what I want to do, what I'm looking for is a consistent scratch pattern across the first quarter inch or so of that tool. And I'm going to keep doing this, running the tool back and forth, and I'm going to use the whole stone, but again, I'm focusing my pressure over the bevel. Okay, and now this is pretty good, it's pretty consistent. So now I can move on to my next stone. If you're using a water stones, you might start out with, say, 1,000 grit and move on to a 4,000 and an 8,000. I'm using oil stones. This is a fine India stone. It's about 320 grit. And oil stone grits and water stone grits are not the same. So the 320 India is actually probably very close to 1,000 grit water stone. This is a white hard Arkansas stone. I don't know what grit that correlates to. You know, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 or so. It does the job, and that's really all I'm concerned with. I don't worry about the grit sizes. So we move to this stone, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take that back, and we want to rub it on this stone now, keeping the bevel as the face of that chisel as flat as possible. And we want to remove all the scratches from the previous stone. Now again, this is what I meant when I talked about feedback from the tool before. I'm looking at the tool, I'm checking the tool to see where it needs work. Now what I can see is that the scratches aren't even on this side, so I'm going to put a little bit more pressure on this side of the tool to even it out and get all those scratches and, to be the same, and make sure I've removed all the scratches from the coarser stone. And this is that's what I mean by feedback. Let the tool tell you where it needs work. Pay attention to the scratch pattern. Pay attention to the bevel when we get to the bevel. So this is done here. So now I'm going to move on to my final stone. This is a black Arkansas stone. And again, we're going to do the same thing, keeping the pressure right over that bevel. And I'm just working the last quarter inch, half inch or so of this chisel. And I want to continue to work it 2 or 3 dozen strokes and then check it. Okay, we're almost there. A little bit of work on this side. So I'm going to move the pressure over a little bit, put a little bit more pressure there until the scratch pattern is all the same, and the scratches from the finest stone have now replaced the hard Arkansas, and we're good. Now I'm actually going to stop here. I will strop later, but I'm not going to worry about that right now, because the next step is to focus on the bevel. Okay, once we have the back quarter or half inch or so taken care of, we need to move on to the bevel. Now how you decide to establish your primary bevel is up to you. Some people like a honing guide. Some people, will do it on a belt sander, and they will like a flat bevel. Some folks will use something like a Tormek or a work sharp. A high-speed grinder, that's what I used to use. I've since moved to a hand crank grinder just because it goes along with the theme of my shop, and it's quieter than a high-speed grinder. I can use it when the kids are sleeping. And I just, I like it. It really works well. It runs cooler than a high-speed grinder, even with, a cheap stone on it. So that's what we're going to, what I'm going to focus on today. But how you decide to establish that primary bevel, completely up to you. Again, this really isn't about, the grinder or the stones that I'm using. It's about, the tool itself and focusing on that edge itself. So, I'm going to put my glasses on. We are grinding steel here. This does still move pretty fast. So what I'm interested in, and I don't know what this is set at. I don't know what this bevel angle is. I don't measure them. What I do typically do is, I'll grind my chisel or my plane iron with a hollow grind, hone it up, and use it. If I'm finding in use that I'm getting chips in the edge, then I'll increase that bevel angle slightly the next time I grind it. I want to use the lowest angle that I can use and still have the tool hold an edge. Again, I don't measure the angle. Every one of my tools probably has a different angle. I don't really care what it is as long as it holds an edge and doesn't chip. If it chips, I'll increase the angle a little bit. Then once I have that angle established and I know, okay, this tool performs good with this angle, it's easy for me to just use the tool to then set up the tool rest when I go to grind it. And I can, eye this up and line up the center of the bevel with the stone, and I know that's the right angle. So what I'm focusing on now is I want to look and see where this tool needs to be ground. From honing, you may have more metal, more steel might need to be taken away on this side or this side. You're focusing on the tool and what the tool is telling you where it needs steel to be removed. So I'm not going to try and talk over the grinder, but I just want to show you, how I'm going about this. So I'm going to take off just a little bit of steel at a time and then check the tool and kind of read where it needs more material taken away. Okay, now you're probably not going to see this too well, but what I'm seeing here in this tool is that I've taken a little bit more off of this corner and off of this corner, so I want to focus my grinding more on the center. So this is, again, what I'm talking about when I say to listen to the tool and get feedback from the tool. Evened it all out. I'm going to go ahead and finish this up just to let you know what I'm looking for. Because I'm grinding the center of this bevel, the grinder hasn't touched the very tip or the heel yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind until I'm almost all the way there, and then I'm going to stop, and then I'll turn the camera back on and show you where I am. Okay, I finished grinding the big 2-inch chisel. So what I'm looking for, when I first start grinding a chisel, and I'll use the 3/4 that I was demonstrating the flattening technique with, the back of the chisel is flat. So when I first start grinding, the back of that chisel is still flat. As I get closer and closer to finishing that hollow grind, the areas of the bevel that have not been ground start to get thinner and thinner as that hollow grind spreads along the bevel. When I get almost to the end, and what I mean by the end is when I can barely see just a little bit of the honed edge left on the very edge of this chisel, I make sure that the chisel's nice and cool. If I have to, I'll dunk it in water to cool it off. Usually not necessary if I take it slow with the hand crank. And then I'll slow down my grinding. And what I do is I grind a little bit and I'm watching that edge, and I grind until I just feel a burr on the back side of the chisel. Once I feel that burr, I know that I've ground all the way to the edge. I don't need to grind any further. I'm ready to move on to the stones. Okay, I'm back to the stones. And I'm back to my 3/4 inch chisel because this is going to be easier and faster for me to demonstrate this with. Now if I didn't need to grind like I don't need to do with this chisel, regardless whether I ground a new hollow grind into here first or whether this one just needs to be touched up, it doesn't need to be ground like this one does, I'm going to start with this stone. Now I don't use any honing guide. I like to do it freehand. And I think the hollow grinding actually helps to make this easier. There's an article on the Tools for Working Wood website on how to go about doing this, and really it's a great article that actually got me to try this years ago. And once I picked it up, and it literally, I was able to pick this up in, 20 minutes. I was able to drop my honing guide and just start honing freehand. Once I started, I sold my honing guide, and that was it. So it's really helped me to become a better sharpener and be able to do it faster. And what I'm finding is that I will stop in the middle of working and go over to the stones and hone, because it doesn't take me so long. I don't have to set up a honing guide. I don't have to worry about getting the angle just right. The hollow grind helps with that, and here's how. I put the heel of the chisel on the stone. Now, because this has a concave grind to it, it's only going to make contact at the heel and the very edge here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the heel of the chisel on the stone, and I'm going to rock it forward, and you will feel when the chisel actually makes contact at the front, it sort of clicks down, and you'll feel that. That's what you're looking for. You want to feel that click. Your left hand, if you're right-handed, if you're lefty, just reverse this, puts pressure over the bevel. Again, right over that area that you just polished the back of, you're going to put pressure right over that bevel. You want all the pressure right on the very edge. Once you do that, your right hand is just support. I mean, I can almost hold this chisel with just my left hand, just that finger. Your right hand lends a little bit of support, but you're going to do most of your work with your left hand, the one that's low on the bevel, because that's what's putting the pressure on. Once you do that, okay, once you have your hand set, you can lock them against your body like this and just hold that position. And then you just rock your body. Okay, your hands never change, so your hands are now your honing guide. And you rock your body, and your body moves the chisel. And because your hands are locked against your body, that angle doesn't change. And the fact that you have a hollow grind on here helps, because the chisel won't rock. And if it does rock, it'll rock back on the heel of the bevel a little bit, no big deal. You're not ruining your edge. You just rock it back forward and get it back on that bevel. Now, I made about 6 passes, and because I didn't grind this, there was no burr. Now this, again, I'm going to talk about letting the tool give you feedback. What I'm doing is I'm feeling for the burr. This stone is going to generate a burr. That's what I'm looking for. That's how I know when it's time to move on. So I'm feeling for the burr on the back of this chisel. And what I feel is that there's a burr here, but not so much here. So I'm going to put a little bit more pressure on this side. And again, I'm going to go ahead and hone maybe a half dozen to a dozen strokes. Again, pressure with this hand on right over that bevel. And I'm going to feel for the burr again. And now I feel a burr, maybe except for just this very corner there's not one. And I can actually see here where that very corner hasn't touched the stone and been honed. It might have actually been ground a little bit low. So I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on it and see. And if it doesn't hone this time around, then it means that I actually ground that corner, I ground that corner down a little too far the last time I ground it. So I'll just leave it alone. Now I've got a burr all across the bevel, all across the face, the back side of the chisel. I can feel the burr. So that's it. I'm finished with this stone. I move on to my next stone. Now when I'm honing like this, if I was honing the big 2-inch chisel that I just took off the grinder, I would go in progression all 3 stones, because I'm trying to take the rough ground edge off of there. With this particular chisel, because I didn't have to grind it and I'm just touching this up, I actually skip the middle stone and I go from the India stone straight to my black Arkansas, because I don't have to worry about removing any grinder marks. I mean, you're removing the grinder marks here first anyway, but I usually hit the middle stone when I have a fresh ground tool. When I don't have a fresh ground tool, if I'm just touching up the edge, I'll go from the India straight to the black Arkansas. Again, I'm going to do the same thing. Put the bevel down and rock it forward and it clicks into place. And that's your registration. That's how you're able to maintain the same bevel angle all the time. I'm not lifting. I'm not trying to put a secondary bevel on this. Once it registers and clicks into place, that's the angle that I'm holding. I lock my body in. Okay, I lock my hands in place. The pressure with my left hand is right over that edge, and I'm going to rock. And again, we're going to go maybe a dozen or 2 dozen strokes here, and we're going to check the edge. And again, what I'm going to be looking for is the scratch pattern. I want to make sure that all the scratches from the previous stone have been removed by this stone. If there's still an area that needs a little bit of work, I'll focus more pressure on that area. And again, I'm seeing here the scratch pattern's a little bit different on this edge, so I'm going to focus a little bit more pressure right over that edge. Again, locking my hands in place and rocking with my body, using my legs to rock back and forth, and that is what's moving the chisel, not my arms. Okay, now I've got a good scratch pattern along there, but I still got a burr. So I said before I stopped at the Arkansas stone, but then I said there was another step. So I'm going to go back to the face again, and I'm going to do what's called chasing the burr. So I'm going to go back to the flat side, and I'm going to run this over the stone for maybe 1 or 2 dozen strokes again. And what this is going to do now, and it's not quite there yet, so I'm going to put the pressure right over that bevel. Okay, now what this has done is flip the burr over to the bevel side. So now when I run my finger here, I can feel the burr on this side. So now I'm going to go back to the bevel again, lock my hands, maybe a dozen strokes on this side. And this is going to flip the burr to the back again. And I'm going to continue doing this maybe 3 or 4 times, chasing the burr and moving the burr back and forth. But I'm not trying to break it off, I'm trying to hone it off. Okay, so I'm not bending it to the point, like a paper clip, if you bend it back and forth, it'll break. What I really want to do is hone it off. And what I'll sometimes see, after a couple of rounds chasing the burr, I'll see the burr actually hone right off, and I'll see a little wire on my stone. And what I'm doing is I'm chasing the burr until I no longer feel it. And it probably takes 3 or 4 times, maybe 2 dozen strokes each time you do it. But once it's done, you won't feel the burr on either side anymore. And then it's time to move on to the final step, which is the stropping. Alright, I've chased the burr a couple times, and I've moved my stones out of the way and replaced them with a strop. This is just a leather strop, a piece of stiff, thick leather. And I dress it with a little bit of green honing compound, and this stuff is available just about everywhere. You can use the leather plain. I like the honing compound just because I think it polishes a little more and gives the edge nice refined edge, and I like it for carving tools too. And you just rub it on like a crayon. You don't need a lot. It stays on for a good long time. The excess oil that's on the chisel helps too, to lubricate a little bit. Now, unlike using the stones when we're stropping, it's one direction only. Some people like to glue their strop to a hardwood block to keep it flat. I like to use my strop with my carving tools as well and bend it and get it into the crevices, so I don't keep it glued down. I just put it on my bench when I need it and pull my chisel back. So it's just a couple of strokes, straight back, keeping the bevel planted firmly. And then I flip and I do the back. Same thing, 2 or 3 strokes, just like when we were chasing the burr. And we flip, and we do the bevel again. And then I'll flip and do the face again. And I'm looking for the polish that's coming up, and it's just about there. Maybe one more pass. Okay, finish up on the back side. Again, 3 easy strokes. Wipe her off. Okay, and I now have a mirror polish that I can see my reflection in on both the face and the bevel. The true test is how well it cuts. Some people like the shave the hair off the arm method. That certainly works. The problem with that method is it will shave skin off of you as well. So if you're not careful, you can certainly cut yourself very easily. Another method is to drag a fingernail across the blade this way, not this way. So if you drag your thumbnail and it catches, that's supposed to mean it's sharp enough. I like using pine, just a piece of pine. This is just a scrap of eastern white pine. You can see my kids were actually coloring all over it. Pine works better than hardwood actually for testing sharpness because it's softer. A harder wood will resist crushing a lot better than a soft wood like pine. So a real good test is to see if you can shave pine end grain cleanly, because pine fibers will crush before they cut with a tool that is anything but super sharp. So if you really want to test the sharpness of your tools, get yourself a piece of pine and test them out. Here we go, here's the test. See how sharp our chisel is? Takes almost no effort at all. And look at that. Clean end grain shavings from pine. That chisel is plenty sharp enough to do the finest of furniture work. Okay, just one final word for this episode about skew irons or skew chisels. The one benefit that I really do like about freehand honing as well is the fact that there's no difference for honing a skewed iron or a skewed chisel. It's still a straight edge. That straight edge just happens to be at an angle from 90 degrees. But the concept is still exactly the same. Place the heel down, rock it until the bevel hits, and just hold that chisel or skewed iron in place and rock your body. So, wide irons, narrow irons, skewed irons or straight irons, all of them can be done the same way. You don't have to worry about special honing guides or honing jigs or angle settings. It's self-jigging, it's self-gauging. Everything goes right down where it needs to be and guarantees the perfect honing angle every time. So, if you don't hone freehand, that's fine. If you like your jigs, your honing guides, there's nothing wrong with them. This for me just happens to be faster. I can stop in the middle of working, knock the iron out of the plane, hone it up real quick, put it back in the plane and get back to work, and it probably takes me all of 2 minutes time. That's really one of my priorities for sharpening. It's got to be easy, and I think this method is easy. It's got to be fast so that I don't mind doing it often and keeping my tools sharp, and it's got to be repeatable. And the hollow grind certainly makes it repeatable. So that's it for the straight tools. Next time we're going to tackle some curved edges like gouges and molding plane irons. So hopefully you'll come back and join me again. We'll see you later.